Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Anna Zlokovic, the writer and director of Appendage, which is now streaming on Hulu. Welcome to the show.
Yay, thanks for having me.
So excited to have you. Thanks for matching my energy, because we both saw, I saw Appendage at South by Southwest this year.
Oh, cool.
Time is fake. I was just like, wait, that felt so long ago. And I loved it. I was like, wait, this is so exciting. I love how you look at anxiety. But I also had seen your short previously, too, that stars Rachel Sennett.
Yes.
So I would love to hear kind of just about where Appendage, like the initial idea came from before the short. And maybe we should start with, I'm jumping into the interview before like any introduction to your movie. I'm sorry. I got so excited to talk about your movie. Can you give our listeners, before you answer my question?
Well, before you even get to that, let me interject something, because it was so funny, because Mary Beth saw this at South by and she was like, Terry, have you seen this movie? And I was like, no, I haven't. I really want to. She's like, we got to get Anna on the podcast. I was like, great, let's do it. And then fast forward to the Halloween event where we both got to interview you on that. I was like, I messaged Mary Beth right after that. I was like, yes, we need to get her on. So we're really excited that you're here is basically hence the chaotic energy.
Same. I got so excited when I came on here and saw y'all's faces. I was like, yeah, we're back.
Because let me tell you, 6 minutes at a junket, not a lot of time.
It's nothing.
It's insane. I'm like, oh, I thought that was 30 seconds. Why we have to say goodbye? That's crazy.
I know.
Wild.
Okay, so that off the top, if our listeners haven't seen Appendage yet, can you give them a little bit about what it's about?
Yeah. So basically it's about a young fashion designer who, she's in her late 20s. She's really ambitious and she is struggling with anxiety and depression. And, her dark inner voice just explodes out of her body in the form of a tumor that just tells her she's a piece of shit the whole time. And it grows off her body and it just keeps growing and tries to take over her life. And that's the gist of it.
Mood.
If you've ever had anxiety, it truly is the most real, which sounds so funny, but like it is the most realistic representation I've ever seen of anxiety, because anxiety is so ridiculous. Like, I feel like you can only personify anxiety as a little gremlin that bursts out of you and just berates you. And is like, it's almost funny, but it's also really fucked up.
When you back and you're like, wait, what was I just thinking?
Yeah, exactly. Like my therapist is like, so how do you feel now? I'm like, oh, like I'm crazy. But in the moment, it felt very real. Like yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, that was actually one of the biggest challenges of the movie, was balancing sincerity with the humor and making sure that, when it was funny, and when it wasn't, you're like, oh shit, why was I even laughing in the first place?
Yeah. So I would love to know, like, why the fashion world specifically? I mean, I know that fashion is like obviously a very stressful part of the industry, but I'm curious, like, do you have experience in the fashion world? Like, why that choice?
I do not have experience in the fashion world. I have friends who work in fashion, which is how I've been exposed to the culture. But when deciding on Hannah's job, I was like, ooh, she could be a filmmaker. And then I was like, fucking no way. It's not going to be a meta film movie. Be like a writer, and I was like, okay, how many angles can I get of a computer and of typing? Like, it's so not cinematic. I was like, musician, okay, maybe, but it's like very isolating. You're still doing things on your own. And I was like, okay, fashion is very corporate, or it can be. And it's a
Yeah.
world where you could also try to be an artist and have your voice in there,
Yeah.
and also just be attacked every day by your boss. So it kind of fit all of those things, and was also
Cool.
very cinematic and visual.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mary Beth, you started off the interview asking, I'm curious, where did the conception for this idea of the short that would eventually become the film kind of come from?
It came from therapy. I had been in therapy for like 10 years, and I think it was like somewhere in the middle there. My therapist was like, all right, like let's do an exercise where, because I was having a lot of trouble like separating myself from my thoughts. I was like, I am my thoughts, I am my feelings. And she was like, okay, we need to take a step back, like create a character, like let's give it a name, let's like describe it. And it was a very powerful exercise, and it kind of stuck with me narratively to make Your Anxiety a character. And I was like, that should be a movie one day. And this felt like the right time.
Yeah.
What was that like to design what anxiety looked like?
Well, in my therapy session, it was like really scary stuff. I was like, this is like a dark void in the room, etc. And I was like, at this point in my life, it's really important to translate the humor of this so it's relatable. And so I was like, okay, we're going to have multiple stages. Maybe the last stage is like really scary, but let's just have her be cute at first and kind of like, you suck at your job. I was like, okay, I looked at Eraserhead. We looked at Quad 2 from Total Recall. I was like, okay, this is feeling right. Let's like try to, use that as a reference. And, a lot of it was sketching, 3D modeling. We used Midjourney with this awesome artist named Dougie Pledger for one of the stages. It was like a lot of back and forth.
So I'm curious, how much of this creature is practical versus like visual computer effects?
It's all practical. I would say it's 99% practical. I think we had to replace the mouth because I changed the dialogue in post at one point. But that was, but we composited the mouth, so it wasn't like CGI or anything.
Right.
And that's like maybe for 2 shots. And then,
That's awesome.
Like there's it's puppetry, right? So we had to erase people.
Right.
But the actual creature itself she's 100% real. All of them.
I have to say, we've gotten screeners for Chucky this season, the television show, and a lot of times when they come, they are without like the puppetry people removed. They're all wearing like green screen and they're like moving stuff, and so it gave me a newfound respect, which I already had, but like more of a respect for the art of trying to like mimic the puppetry and then deleting out all of the behind the scenes. And that's I don't know, I love hearing that.
Yeah, it's like so crazy. And you have to think about, okay, well, I want it to really sell and I want camera movement. So you're like, okay, so we have to track things, we have to make sure that the puppeteer who is behind the appendage isn't behind the appendage, so we don't have to roto the appendage. I mean, it is like, oh my god, it took such a we had to do everything really fast, but it probably took the longest to make sure that wasn't screwed up.
How long did you have to shoot? How long was the shoot?
20 days, and then we had a monsoon day, so it was 21.
Oh, wow.
20 days for that much practical? That's nuts.
It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot to do. Yeah, we only had like 2 or 3 takes on set for anything, pretty much.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
that's impressive as fuck.
It was crazy. And, I got really lucky. The studio let me have all my department heads and the actors that I wanted. And I was like, this is the only way this is going to get done. If I can't talk to the DP and they're like, wait, how do you want it framed? Like, we're screwed.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, we're going to waste at least a day in total, like trying to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. So that was cool. Powell and I have been working together for 10 years. He can look at me and be like, you want the frame from that project that we did that was up here on the 40? And I'm like, yeah, maybe the 30, but not the 40. Okay, let's do it. And it happens in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, the shorthand, love it.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So. Wait, you said this was the cast you wanted. So did you write this with a feature with certain cast in mind, or like what was that casting process like? Because I love especially Emily Hampshire as our
so
iconic
good.
Bisexual villain, queer villain of my dreams. Anyway.
Yes, exactly. Well, originally Rachel Sennett was in the short. And so I'd written the script for her, and I think she was like shooting bottoms and was incredibly busy. And Hulu was like, we got to keep going. We got to shoot at this time. And I was like, well, shit, let's do it. And so I rewrote the character and left it kind of open-ended. And we just, our casting director started sending lists. And then when I saw Hadley, I was like, wow, like this person is incredible. And, she's Juilliard trained. I was like blown away. And I was like, okay, we only got 3 takes on set. I need someone who really gets this. And I talked to Hadley and she was like, I get this movie. I know exactly what this movie is. I know, she has to play the whole range of literally everything that's ever been. So I was like, this is our person. We actually moved the shoot 2 weeks earlier to accommodate her schedule so she could be a part of it. Because I was so, it's a very tough role to play. And we were like, we getting her in. And then Emily was, also on the list. First person. I was like, we're offering it to Emily. And we were all like, yes. And that was it. I'm so glad that everybody agreed.
Yeah, because it's a weird premise, right? So you have to get people that are going to be on board with it to like be able to sell it authentically. And I think that's what impressed me a lot about Emily and Hadley is because there's some silly things that they have to do in this, right? And to be able to do it and make it feel like this is life or death, this is real, is especially with the time frame of being only 20 days. That's a lot to handle.
100%. You have to be so brave and confident in your abilities to be able to pull off a movie like this as an actor. It's a lot to ask. And it's bizarro, man. It's a bizarre movie. Yeah. I know, believe me. Intentionally so. So, kudos to them for really giving it their all.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm curious because this straddles the line between horror and comedy, among other things. Are you a fan of horror comedies, or what is your subgenre of choice for horror?
Honestly, I have never done anything really that funny before. I mean, kind of. I had a music video that I thought was funny, but I don't know if anyone else did. But I didn't grow up on horror comedy. I love psychological horror. Like I'll do Black Swan. I love Raw. Stuff like that. Raw, I think, is a little funny, but I did watch it with a bunch of frat bros, and they were like, "What the fuck is happening?" Okay, maybe I'm the only one who thinks it's funny. But
no, I definitely think it's funny.
I'm sorry. Ripping, messing up your sister's bikini wax and then having her eat your finger is just it's funny as shit. It's fucking funny.
Even you just saying that, I'm like, it's fucking amazing.
It's so funny. It's hilarious. It's ridiculous in the best way possible.
Exactly.
It's the fuck? Yeah.
So, horror comedy, not my genre of choice necessarily, unless it's through that kind of lens. So it was interesting. Cool. It was an interesting experiment. My first drafts were really dark, and the producers were like, we kind of liked how the short was funny. And I was like, yeah, you got a point. You got a point. And,
what do you mean you don't want it to be bleak? Come on, guys.
Come on, man. Bleak week. But, like I said, anxiety is so funny and so sad and at the same time. And once they gave me that note, it unlocked the whole script, and I wrote it really quick.
Yeah.
It's interesting how that worked.
Yeah. I just realized something that I wanted to ask you when we had our 6 minutes, but we only had 6 minutes. I think there's at least 2 actors in this that are from You're the Worst. Did you like that show, or how did you come across casting Brandon and Desmond? Yeah.
Through our casting director. And I had totally blindly been like, these two. And she was like, oh, they're both on You're the Worst. And I was like, well, that totally tracks. And, I'm not a You're the Worst fan or anything like that. I'm horrible at watching TV, to be totally honest with you. But obviously there was a vibe there,
Mm-hmm.
and there was something that was calling to us.
Yeah, I was just curious because whenever I see people from niche TV shows that not a whole lot of people see, and then you don't typically see more than one of them in a movie. And so I saw both. I was like, I have to ask.
Yeah, I wish it was yes, I've been. But no, it was totally just, I think they both had a comedic flair to them and an energy that the movie really needed. And they fit perfectly in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I am curious, Anna, how did you get into horror? What was your introduction to the genre?
So if you could guess, I have a lot of anxiety, and as a kid, it was worse. And so there was kind of a no horror rule in the house.
Okay.
So the first horror film that I remember seeing, I was 9, and my babysitter showed me The Cell. And
oh my god!
Yeah. honestly, like, in hindsight, cannot believe she fucking did that. But she was like 15 or whatever, and I was like 9, and I was
She
like,
probably didn't even know what the fuck it was about either.
yeah. I feel like we went to Blockbuster, and she's like, "This looks cool, J-Lo." And I was fucking traumatized. Couldn't sleep for months. I actually haven't. I was gonna pick it to talk about tonight, but I actually haven't seen it since then because I'm still traumatized. Maybe after this, y'all, I'll watch it again.
Oh my God.
But
Follow-up
yeah,
episode.
that was my intro. And then
Wow.
my dad was like, "You keep waking us up every night for 3 months after watching this movie. Like, no horror in the house, like, no more." And I was like, "Wow!" So this whole mysticism grew around horror. That kind of made it more scary because I'm like not allowed to watch it. And I think I got reintroduced to it when I was doing my thesis project at USC. And I watched Eraserhead, and that was kind of the re-intro to me.
Oh.
And, I had my roommate was like a big horror fan, and she'd be like, "Come watch a horror movie," and I'd be like, "I don't know, I'm too scared." Now it's like all I do all day is watch horror and still have nightmares. So
I was going to ask because it sounded definitely sounded like you were a little anxious and not trusting of horror movies. So they do still scare you today,
in the best way. Like in college, I discovered, this is cathartic. This is like how I feel as a person. Like I feel seen. Like I feel like a monster, or I feel super lonely, or I feel whatever. And horror talked about that. The best ones, my favorite ones, and I was like, wow, like yeah, this is the best.
It's
it
funny
really
because
is.
I was also a really anxious kid who got really scared, but instead my parents tried to ban it, and they'd be like, no, it'll be fine. Like, you're not going to be able to sleep. And I'm like, no, it'll be fine. And then it would happen. But then like my dad would show me horror stuff when I wasn't home. And when I'd come, like, cause my parents were divorced, I'd come home and my mom would be like, God damn it. You give her back and she's scared. And that went on until I just became numb to being scared. But I also liked being scared.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to like have someone, you trust, maybe be like, these are cool. Like check them out,
Yeah. Maybe
a 15-year-old babysitter who's like,
The Cell with J-Lo.
Yeah.
The number of times that someone has come on the show and it's been like they have a babysitter story there's a good number of them. So shout out to the babysitters for terrorizing.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be a movie there, a horror movie.
I showed my brother House of a Thousand Corpses when I was babysitting once, so
of course you did.
Well, and now both my brothers are into horror movies, so like,
yep. See,
come
you planted the seed.
I planted the seed.
Yeah.
So, do you get scared easily now, still, Anna, from horror movies?
Let me think about that.
Yeah.
I think I do. If I'm able to unlatch from the filmmaking aspects of it.
Okay.
About how they got the shot, or like, oh my God, look at the sequence, how it was cut to achieve the scare.
Yeah.
But yeah, even then, when I am thinking about that stuff, I'm just very sensitive. Like I do get freaked out, I have to say.
What was the last movie to freak you out? Do you remember?
Ooh, to freak me out. Let me think about that. I feel like, honestly, I rewatched The Ring, Gore Verbinski's The Ring, and I was like, this is kind of fucked up. Like, I feel weird. Like, I went to bed that night and I was like, I don't know. There's
a reason why that movie haunted me, and I never saw it until I was in college because I was so scared of it as a kid. Like I watched too many of the trailers and knew too much about it, and I was like, I don't want to watch it. Like that, it haunted me, and it's still fucking scary.
It slaps. That movie slaps. I appreciate it more.
It really does.
Like, and then I also recently rewatched The Exorcist, which when I was a kid, for whatever fucking reason, early 20s, did not scare me. Watched it 6 months ago, couldn't sleep for a week.
Oh my God.
What happened? I think it just hit me. I was like, oh my God, this child is like, being perverted by this evil force. And it's like the scene where she fucking stabs herself with the cross.
Yeah.
Yo, like, that is crazy.
It's fucked up. Like, it's like, the more you think about that movie, the more you're like, wait, this is a really fucked up movie. Like, regardless of if you're religious or not, like, this is just, like, I shouldn't watch it. It does have that cursed vibe to it.
It does.
Yeah, Terry doesn't like The Exorcist, but...
we got a chat. Oh. I gotta know a little bit.
I don't know. You know, it was one of those movies that I did not see until the special edition came out, like in early 2000s when they re-released it, the version you've never seen or whatever it was called. They released it in the movie theaters, and so I was like, I don't know, 20 something, early 20s maybe when I saw it, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, there's some fucked up things in it, but like, I just didn't get it. And I've tried revisiting it, and I don't know. It doesn't do it for me.
It might have to be the right time in life. Like, I felt like you until 6 months ago. It was like my fourth time.
Were you raised religious at all, Anna?
No, I was not.
Okay, neither was Terry. Yeah, neither was Terry.
Yeah,
I was raised Catholic, so it scared the shit out of me when I
Right.
I also saw it when I was like 13. So like I was like 13. I was raised Catholic. My dad was really scared of demons and talked about them all the time, which is like probably a mental illness thing. But like I was convinced I was going to get possessed by a demon at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very real fear for a while.
Yeah, I can't imagine growing up religious and watching that movie, to be honest. Like, I think the stuff that scares me about it is like the fact that medicine can't find the solution, and all those medical scenes where they're like, you know, tapping her spine or whatever. I actually don't know what the procedures are, but that stuff really freaks me out. And that they made it feel so real, you know?
Yeah. You know, because like, so the last time that I did revisit the movie was when we had, I believe it was John Leonetti on the podcast. He's like a cinematographer and filmmaker.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And we had him on, and he had a great story about The Exorcist. And that was the last time I revisited it. And I have to say, the parts you're talking about, the science parts, the part about like the mom not knowing how to take care of her kid, and her kid is going through something really earth-shatteringly horrible and not being able to do anything for it, did get me a lot more than when I was a kid. I just think I don't know, the supernatural stuff just for me doesn't work as well, but that part right there, I will say this last watch made me more of a fan than I was probably. So maybe in 6 months, maybe I'll just be like, scariest movie ever.
You have to report back and be like, okay, I can't sleep.
I can't wait for your transformation, Terry. Wow. Okay, so Anna, we have talked about Appendage and your horror history, but what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss? You've hinted at it a little bit, but
I brought Eraserhead.
Hell
my goodness. So for those of you unfamiliar with Eraserhead, in the film directed by David Lynch, Henry Spencer tries to survive his industrial environment, his angry girlfriend, and the unbearable screams of his newly born mutant child.
Thanks, IMDb. What a synopsis that says everything but nothing kind of at the same time. But I am curious, Anna. I want to know why this was your pick. Give us your horror story. We want to know how you saw it, why you saw it, what about it terrified you. We want your horror story.
All right. I was 18 in college with my roommate who is like a horror buff. And I think she hadn't seen it. And she was like, I've been wanting to watch this for forever. Let's like go to my dorm room and watch it. It's going to be great. And I was like, sick. And then we like made some popcorn. We were like, horror movie. And it started, and I was like about to eat some popcorn, and I was like, oh, like, so this deeply unsettling feeling just sunk in from like the first frame, like the sound design.
Oh, like when the giant sperm comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, and he's like, oh. And I was like, I'm gonna put the popcorn down because I feel I just like the rest of the movie, I was like, I have never felt like so alone, you know, like the feeling of isolation that comes across in that movie. At the time when I was 18, I didn't see any humor. I just saw loneliness and inability to like move through life in like the saddest, scariest way possible. No intimacy, not, you know, understanding how to interact with something that you created, but question mark? You know, that's the level of isolation is like, is this even my baby? You know, it's like something about that really, really freaked me out. It also, while it freaked me out in a deeply disturbing way, it also showed me what movies could be in a way that I hadn't known before. I'm like, oh, I don't have to follow this structure. Like for my thesis, I'm just going to go fucking ham. Like, fuck this shit. You know, so it definitely...
Flying sperms! Radiator babies!
Yes! Exactly.
Fuck it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, so I have to know because I've only seen this movie twice now, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for you, you said you were gonna starting popcorn. You're like, okay, I'm gonna put this down. What was the rest of the 100 hour and 20 minutes for you? What was that like?
Deeply unsettling.
Yeah,
I have a different experience watching it now, but at the time I had a hard time following the narrative and I just let it
yeah.
wash over me. And
Mhm.
just, pure cinema, like sound
Mm.
meets, visual and what is that saying to me with music and performance. And I was just kind of frozen. And my roommate was like, oh. I was like, yeah, dude, this is fucking, I mean, when oh my God, I cry thinking about this. When he goes to Mary's house to visit her parents, and they're sitting there so awkwardly on the couch, and no one likes each other, and it's horrible. And then the dad is like, will you cut the freaking chicken? And he's like, yeah, of course I'll cut the chicken. He cuts the chicken, and it's fucking moving around and spilling blood. And then the
It's
mom.
literally the most incredible encapsulation of meeting your in-laws for the first time
And the
and
horror. Yes.
the horror. It's incredible. It's such a domestic movie if you look past every surreal, which is hard because it's
Yeah.
so surreal, but it
Yeah.
really is such a fascinating look at domesticity and rage in that
Yes.
space.
Yes, 100%. And it taps into some real shit. The mom goes up to Henry and is like, do you have sex with my daughter? And it's so even just saying that, I'm uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Recounting
so direct. It's
and
just
then she hits on him.
She does.
And then the daughter is like, Mom! And I'm it's wild.
Was this your first David Lynch movie, Anna?
It was.
Okay.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. And then I think followed by Mulholland Drive after that.
Okay.
I was like, I'm in. And
have you watched Twin Peaks?
I've watched Twin Peaks, the season 1.
Okay.
So I never really got hooked. I'm not a big I love the music, I love the show, and I think I just kind of dropped off because I said before, TV and me, we don't get along for some reason.
Well, and I'll talk about this later, but there are some interesting kind of connections with Eraserhead and Twin Peaks.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right, I want to know.
We'll get there. But yeah, I'm a David Lynch freak, but this was not the first one I saw, which was I had heard about it, but my first was Twin Peaks, actually. I got really into Twin Peaks with my now husband in college, and then I fell down, and I really liked Blue Velvet. That was it was
so
that
good.
and Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet is so good.
Well, Blue Velvet, we actually shot where we shot Appendage, and so our production office was her apartment building.
No way!
Shit. Isn't crazy?
That's cool!
That's wild.
That's a cool fact.
Wow. That's so cool. Blue Velvet is one of his most realistic movies, but it's also I think one of his scariest because the violence is so visceral in that movie.
Yes.
And I finally saw this, and it was after I had watched season 3 of Twin Peaks, which is The Return, which is the Showtime one that is just absolute what? And then I saw this and I was like, everything makes sense now. It all came full circle because Eraserhead is basically Twin Peaks in the Twin Peaks The Return universe. And that's not super confirmed, but the vibes are very similar.
Yeah,
so
I trust you.
Yes.
I believe it. That's fact to me now.
It's canon. Yeah. So what's interesting to me is I have never aside from one movie, I had never seen a David Lynch film. I saw Dune when I was a kid because my mom loved Dune. And so we had sat down and we had watched Dune. And so for me, for the longest time, that was the only David Lynch thing I'd ever seen. And I'm doing this podcast with one of my writing friends, Joe Lipset of the Horror Queers. And we're doing this thing where we're going through David Lynch and David Cronenberg's filmography because I'm not as familiar with either of them, less so David Lynch than Cronenberg. So we're watching this, and this was the one of the very first movies because we were doing it chronologically. And so this was my second experience with David Lynch. And the first time watching it was maybe a year and a half ago at this point. And this movie, I've seen it twice now because I watched it to prep for this. And this movie gives me resting gross face. I'm just sitting here
Yes.
It's dirty. It feels
For
so
the entire
dirty.
film.
Yes, his room has dirt in it, y'all. And then,
Yeah.
it's so representative of how he sees himself as like a repulsive person, or like you feel repulsion, resting gross face, as you said.
I mean, the only art he has on his wall is a picture of a nuclear bomb exploding. Like, that is the art. That is like what he is choosing to
love
place
David
on
Lynch.
his wall.
I
Less-
fucking love David Lynch. He just is like as subtle as a sledgehammer sometimes. I swear to God. This man makes both the most obtuse art house shit and then drops a picture of an atomic bomb and is like, this is a post-apocalyptic landscape. And it's like, I love how he is both so obvious and so obtuse at the same time with his work. It's quite impressive with him as a filmmaker, like the way he is able to balance these things. It is incredible.
Yeah, it's very, very special. He's a one of a kind.
I just love
really
his
is.
weird little fucked up brain. I just want to like give it a little kiss and be like, tell me all your secrets, you weird man.
Also, like, his just, persona in general. Like, I just saw somebody like reposted a meme of him doing Laura Dern's. Like, he like hired a cow and like sat on the corner.
Yes, for your consideration for Inland Empire.
And I was like, what a badass.
Well, I recently learned this, and can we talk a little bit about the Eraser? Should we want to talk about the Eraserhead baby now, or do we want to talk some more about what leads up to Eraserhead baby, Terry, before we get into actual baby?
I mean, that's a loaded question. I don't know how to answer that.
That's fair. I don't know. Yeah, fair. Because I've learned a lot of facts about the Eraserhead baby recently, and I just love this baby, and now learned the mysterious origins of the baby. So I'm just very excited to talk about this icon of cinema.
Yes,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So, as what a lot of people probably know about Eraserhead is about this baby, and this baby that is like a little weird head and a body wrapped in a weird blanket that just like yells all the time. And he is the baby of our man Eraserhead. And I was telling offline how there have been memes about Eraserhead baby being trans in my very niche part of my film studies, gender studies corner of the internet. It's very incredible. But also this baby and how they created the baby, no one actually knows how David Lynch did it.
What?
So the projectionist who worked on the dailies of the film was blindfolded to avoid revealing the prop. And Lynch will not tell anyone how it happened. Like, he says things like maybe it was found, maybe it was born nearby, but the whole thing, similar to the appendage, is all practical. Like, it has moving parts in it, but no one knows exactly how it was accomplished and how this baby came to be.
Wow.
Lynch, I would love for this to actually be a real weird baby that Lynch found. I know that is not true at all, but really... Like, I love his dedication to the bit of, like, I found it.
Yeah, well, he, spoiler alert, murders it in the end.
He does.
He does.
But,
does stab.
That is the most upsetting part of the movie for me.
I know, when he cuts open the blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're waiting for that the entire movie. You're like, what's under there? And let me see what's under. And then it just is blanket with organs inside.
That's the best part.
Oh.
Like,
yeah, resting gross face.
Seriously, that is. I was sitting there and I realized my face was hurting this time watching it because, again, I know what's coming. I know what's going to happen because I'd seen it before, and yet I'm just sitting here. This is making me so uncomfortable that by the end of the movie, I had to like massage my face because it was hurting so bad.
Totally.
I actually have a even deeper appreciation for this movie now. I am not a parent, but after having a lot of my friends become parents and like helping with kids, again, I'm not saying I understand it fully, but like this is a very good portrayal of like hellacious postpartum and like seeing a man taking care of a baby postpartum, and not saying it's like a feminist masterpiece, but like it's interesting to see like a father struggling with what it means to like have a baby and have a kid and be a dad. And again, it's like a very fascinating, simple story that is made incredibly fucked up and surreal. And I love that David Lynch is able to do that with his work. Like take these very like human stories and make them feel so foreign.
Yes. And it's like quite amazing and powerful. And like watching it as an adult, I'm like, oh, he like is socially awkward and has anxiety and doesn't know how to talk to his girlfriend's parents. And like, I'm like kind of laughing this time watching it. I watched it like last year and I was like, oh, like I get it, you know?
Yeah, and it's like you feel so bad for him, and you're like, again, like he's like, I get it, and you're just trying to navigate a hellscape that you're just trying to make it through the day, and then all of a sudden, you have to be a caretaker, and what the fuck does that mean? I can barely take care of myself. Like it's just
exactly, and there's a horror to that. It's totally horrifying, and people do it all the time somehow in reality.
How?
I don't know. No idea.
Like when the baby gasps and has all of a sudden boils all over its face. Like how like that? How do you deal with that as a parent? Like,
yeah, no idea. And parenting is full of body horror. You're cleaning up poop, you're cleaning up pee, you got rashes, you got all sorts of things going on.
You got all weird sorts of shit coming out of babies at all times, and like there's so much body horror in this around the baby, and like it's hard because like is it body horror if it's not purely a human baby, but it's still really scary and wet and gross and like horrific because like it is a baby, so I feel bad. And I think Lynch is playing with your like it's not really acute and doesn't look like a baby, so do you feel bad when these things happen? And it's like whoa, dehumanizing the baby, man.
yeah, dehumanizing the baby, exactly. And it's like scary because it's true. Like sometimes, when I was born, my mom was like, oh, like in a loving way. She was like, I didn't realize like there was another person there, like a foreign. Yeah,
I mean, but I hear that from people all the time. Like, oh wait, you're a real, like that's a real like person that I'm in charge of. Like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, and like trying to capture that feeling in a film, in my mind, is Eraserhead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this movie is inscrutable. Like it is. I think it is. Unless you live.
No, it's
in
obvious.
David
What the fuck,
Lynch's.
Terry? Come on.
Unless you live in David Lynch's head, I don't think anyone can completely understand. However, when I was doing research, trying to understand, when I was trying to figure this movie out, when I was originally covering it on the other podcast with Joe Lipsett, I was sitting there going, what is happening in this movie? I don't understand. And I did find some things that kind of point to like what we're kind of talking about, like fear of being a parent. And because at this time, Lynch was like, I think a couple of years before this movie came out, he did go through a divorce. Mm-hmm. His daughter was on set a lot of times for this. And there was this article from the Independent that was about Jennifer Lynch, his daughter, who went on to make Boxing Helena, among other things, was talking about how she was on the set and she said, it didn't give me nightmares, but I said, Dad, this is definitely not a movie for kids. And then the article goes on to say, while that's putting it mildly, you might have to wonder what she made of the story of a man who fathers a mutant baby. After all, Lynch, Jennifer, an unplanned child, was born with club feet. As an infant, she was placed in a cast from the waist down. Unable to crawl, she would pull herself along, encumbered by a metal bar between her ankles. She eventually underwent surgery at age 4 and wore orthopedic shoes until she was 12. She says that life in the Lynch house was, well, Lynchian. She recalls making her mother a birthday present by piling mud on the dining room table. We packed it tight and dug little holes and made little clay figures with long arms and stuck them in the openings. And the thing stayed there for years. We ate somewhere else. My mom came home and was like, I love it.
Shut the fuck up.
Dude.
And that was normal to me. It never occurred to me that people weren't doing this for each other. And so like
that's
seeing that. Yeah, exactly. Seeing that and then seeing this movie where the man is dealing with this woman, his girlfriend. I don't think they're even married at any time in this movie. And then they end up, she sort of leaves him alone to carry for this thing that obviously needs a lot of help. And so I see that, and I see this story about Jennifer, and I'm like, there's a lot of anxiety here about being a father and trying to raise a kid.
Yeah, that's wild. That's great research right there.
I literally went down rabbit holes. I'm like, I don't understand this at all. What am I watching?
Yeah, I mean, that explains a lot, I don't know if anyone would ever admit to that, but I feel like it really,
of course not.
Right? Like, and I don't know, it's very, it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
Relatable. I was just even thinking about, while all that is going on, there's like a sexy apartment lady who's like,
there sure is.
There sure is.
And, like behind the radiator,
Yeah, her too. I was like, the radiator lady Do you have any
right.
ideas on what you think the woman in the radiator is?
No fucking clue. My notes
Um,
for this movie were a lot of question marks. Like, this is happening? Question mark. And this is happening.
I was like, what if it's like his mom, Henry's mom, and it's like all the sperm is falling, and which one is he going to be? You know, and I'm
And
like,
she's just sidestepping them. Like,
you know how you
what's
really
falling there?
sometimes you gotta.
With the chipmunk cheeks, like just
Oh, what is
it's
that?
so bizarre.
It's so disturbing in the best
That's
way.
one of the parts of it where I'm like, I don't. The metaphor loses me at that in the back
Yeah.
half. The metaphor does kind of like, because part of me is like, is it desire, and is he like finding desire in strange places,
Right.
and like what, or is it just David Lynch being like, there's a little lady behind the radiator singing a song, because like
Of course.
it's 50-50 with him, honestly, about like, what does she mean, or is it just a funny little creepy thing that goes on in this world that is just like inscrutable? Because again, like, this is the predecessor to Twin Peaks, and a lot of stuff he did in this movie he used in Twin Peaks, especially the recording voices backwards and then playing them forwards again as a way to get that really bizarre speech in the Black Lodge, or the Red Room, like where that man is dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot, and like, especially with her, like the radiator woman with her cheeks, like that has a lot of vibes of the Black Lodge and like that kind of setting, especially. And again, it's black and white, you don't have that as much, but you see like that pattern, that the zigzag pattern repeated a lot. You see like the curtains behind her, and just like the weird music and the surrealness of it all. It's like you can see Lynch playing in these really interesting worlds, and like, I love when he gets like this, and I wish there was more. Like, he did a lot of this in season 3 of Twin Peaks, and I want more of this kind of stuff. It's really cool.
Well, I feel like it might also be tied to his fine arts background too, and it's like,
oh yeah,
like aesthetic stuff for just the sake of something aesthetic is valid, also.
oh yeah. And
Right.
because he does that, he had like a couple like the Rabbits was like his short films he made that were just like surreal art housey stuff. Because I feel like that, again, this is kind of like art house aesthetic stuff and also fatherhood things, and it's just interesting to see how he balances that in a lot of his work, and like when he decides to swing one way or the other. And it's really interesting with his work, like what he chooses and when he chooses. Like, did you watch his short on Netflix where he talks to the monkey who is married to the chicken?
What?
All right, hold on. Yeah, hold on. What's it called? What Did Jack Do?
Let me look this up.
And essentially, David Lynch is interrogating a capuchin monkey named Jack who's married to a chicken.
Oh.
And it's like 20 minutes of him just like interrogating a monkey who yells at him.
Oh my gosh, these stills are amazing.
Like, it's,
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so. Hopefully that's still available, because I know
it is. It is. It's very strange.
I'm gonna have to go watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got Eraserhead vibes.
Yeah, I could even just looking at the stills, I'm like, yep, we're back. That is so wild.
What's been interesting to me going through his filmography chronologically, so like I'm caught up to season 2 of Twin Peaks in his filmography, but going through that for the other podcast, what I did find really interesting with this movie is it sort of sets out like a thesis for what he likes to explore, because we have this post-industrial like feel here. It's like post-capitalism, everything is falling, it's post-apocalyptic, like the vibe, the idea of living in a industrial wasteland is something that sort of pops up a little bit. We see that in Blue Velvet. We've seen it in not Eraserhead. We've seen it in Elephant Man. It's like the idea of the industrial kind of creeping into Twin Peaks. We see a couple times. So we see that sort of here in the start of his career. And then the idea of like normalcy hiding something dark and deeply disturbing underneath. So like the scene that like I really appreciate on this rewatch was the scene we talked about a little bit earlier, where he goes over to meet his in-laws, sort of, and they're going through like the era of domesticity here, right? So we have like, we're gonna cook these chickens, and the dad is like, they're man-made, but they're new, and it's sort of like that excitement over something new, and the mom is in the back and she's preparing the salad, and then she goes over to her catatonic mother, I'm assuming, and grabs her hands and makes her go through the motions of tossing the salad. And so it's like this idea of like, everything is fucked, this world is destroyed, but we're going to keep going through the motions, even though what we're doing is pointless and horrible.
Yeah. Honestly, more relatable than ever.
Right?
Yeah, that's an amazing analysis, though. Like that, you know, amidst all the themes of parenthood, you have that as like a foundation, which is wild that he's able to weave all those things together.
Yeah.
And even through Inland Empire, I feel like that's, you know, it's all kind of bubbling there.
I still need to see Inland Empire.
I saw it a while ago, and it's a tough one to get through.
It's like 3 hours, right, of Laura Dern having a mental breakdown, basically.
Yeah. It's you get some coffee, you know. I mean, I appreciate everything that he does, but that one was tough for me.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Again, I appreciate Lynch for what he does, but sometimes he could like. I love Twin Peaks, but there are parts like Terry, you're in season 2 of Twin Peaks. There's going to be some parts where you're like, "What is?"
Oh,
are you there? Okay, it's weird. It becomes a very long soap opera for a while, and it's just like, what? Yeah, it's rough. It's a little bit of a slog there for a bit.
I want to ask, just to go back, about the meme, the gender studies meme, and the trans.
Oh, so it's basically someone, you know, that like the meme, like almost like the so there is an interview with here, actually I'm gonna send it in our chat so you guys can observe what I'm observing. But basically David Lynch is in an interview and he says, believe it or not, Eraserhead is something, and then they say elaborate on that, and he goes no, and so someone edited to say, believe it or not, Eraserhead baby is trans, and elaborate on it, no, and then people like made something. It's like very niche, but then there's like
niche.
There's people just designing the baby to say trans rights. There's a couple gifs of it.
How did I not know this?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's an Instagram gif of it.
Yep.
What?
That's amazing.
Eraserhead baby is trans.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That is amazing.
Wow. That made my day.
Mine too.
Yeah. So it's just a fun little thing where the internet just goes down into a meme rabbit hole so deep that if someone sees that, they're like, I don't get it. And you're like, the levels of irony I have to explain to you to like have this make any semblance of sense. We're too far gone as a society for me to be able to explain like the different levels of this ridiculous image.
When I see it, I'm like, this is why the internet's cool. You know?
Exactly. Yes. Oh, I love it. It's like the niche. And like my friend and I would send each other like trans rights, Eraserhead baby memes. Just like we're just like to each other during grad school. It was the most film studies grad school thing ever. Do you know what I mean? It's so funny. Like it's such a stereotype, and I love it so much. We're so smart and distinguished reading about gender studies, meanwhile sending each other trans Eraserhead baby memes. Like when we're supposed to be doing readings and writing essays and being academics, we're like, LOL, but what about the memes instead? That's what grad school is.
Amazing.
I'm jealous. That sounds amazing.
Amazing.
Anyway.
I don't know how to segue from that.
There's no way. I'm so sorry. There's no way to segue from that.
But I do want to talk about the sound design in this, because it's something that immediately grabbed my attention the first time I watched this, and this last time it just like sunk into me even more. Because here's the thing, even though I'd never seen, other than Dune, which doesn't really count as a David Lynch film, even though I had never seen a David Lynch film except...
Easy.
Breaks.
Are we fighting there?
Just kidding. It's nonsense. It's hot nonsense.
It is. Don't get me wrong. I actually really enjoy that movie, even though I think it's a little.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. But
I haven't seen that one.
It somehow feels longer than the Villeneuve Dune movie that is only part 1 of Dune.
Really?
He tries to put everything in one movie, and because Dune is such an inscrutable thing in the first place, he just puts all of this lore into a movie where you're like, I was watching it sober and I was like, am I drunk? Are they speaking a different language? Like it feels like they are not speaking English because it's so much lore that is not explained. And you're just like, all right, that's fine. Like, I'm just going to vibe here.
There's no time.
There's no time to explain. Just the weird nipple suit from Kyle MacLachlan where his nipples are out, but everything else is covered.
There you go.
Oh, hold on. Let me find this. Okay.
Let's get a little view of that.
Yeah. But which, by the way, he was a very handsome man in the 80s, like between Dune and
He's
Blue Velvet
handsome.
and into yes, he really is. He's become more distinguished, but like he was a little cutie back then. But okay, so but my point though, before I got sidetracked with Dune, is that even though I had never seen a Lynch film, I was aware of him because I'm a huge fan of Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails.
Oh, yes.
And he is also a huge fan of Lynch. They have actually, cooperated. Oh yeah, that's his mesh.
Let's see it.
I'm telling you, that is like
nipple panels. I forgot they were the nipple mesh panels.
Oh,
I
apologize. You can drop down. There's it seems like there's little curtains.
Yeah, it's like
modesty, right? If you want to be modest
it's like
or
circulation.
Not. Is this a tits out party or not? We can be both. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready for the gay club and I'm ready for high fashion. What can I say? But the thing is that like I said, I love Trent Reznor, and David Lynch was very influential on Trent Reznor's idea of sound. Mm-hmm. And I did find an interview where they were talking with Trent, and I have a clip of it. Hopefully it'll play in here of him talking about sound design, and in particular talking about Eraserhead with sound design as being influential to what he wants to do with his sounds. And so here it is. Hopefully it'll play.
I've been thinking about sound design in films and how it can make me feel uncomfortable by hiding some things in there that subconsciously could make you feel a certain way, because that's what the record was about. I was very much inspired by the films of David Lynch. Not so much what the music was doing, but what sound was doing. There's a radiator and I feel like I'm going crazy. Why is that? Because that humming sound in the room is super loud. It miraculously could make you feel incredibly uncomfortable. It's not all meant to just repulse you, but to be able to emotionally set the stage for what I was trying to get across.
Wow. Is that from the Rick Rubin interview?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. But yeah, so he was talking in particular about Eraserhead with this. And that's something that really got my attention both times that I've seen this movie now, is that the sound is oppressive and it's always there. From the very start of the movie till the very end, there is always a sound, whether it is the hum of the radiator in his room, or it's the sound of the industrial world outside, or it's the sound of the suckling dogs. Like there is always sounds happening 100% of the time. And it's not until the last moment when it just like cuts out and there's like 3 or 4 seconds of silence before the credit rolls that it's like, oh my God, there's no sound now. Because for an hour and 20, 30 minutes, you are doing nothing but hearing sound. And it is so incredibly unsettling that it is just this constant background noise that is just always there.
Okay. I just had a really weird thought and theory about the woman in the radiator after listening to that clip. Can I spitball this really weird theory I have? Okay. So when he said like the sound of the radiator humming and like going crazy, that kind of like kicked something into my head of what if her singing is him trying to visualize the humming of the radiator as something different than what he's hearing all the time. And it is him imagining. And then on top of that, this is where it gets kind of fucking gross. I'm really sorry about what I'm about to say. He's hanging his socks over the radiator, and sometimes guys jerk off using socks. What if it's
wow. This is officially fact. Holy shit.
And he kind of hates women. So what if he's imagining her getting pelted by his sperm? Yeah, I know that's fucking crazy. But you know what? Why not?
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And then she's like, in heaven.
Sidestepping that one.
Yeah. And it's like he's imagining this woman and he's like harassing her, but she's still singing. So it's like this weird feminine ideal. This is probably such nonsense, but I had to share my thoughts. So There's my fan theory for the lady behind the radiator and the sperm that she's dodging. It's the cum dripping off of his socks.
Wow. It's too good. It's too real.
Hard-hitting analysis from Scott for life.
Wow.
I mean,
more unpack there. That's a lot. That's pretty amazing.
I mean, I will say that I definitely think you're onto something with like the radiator, because there's no entertainment in this world, right? And so when he like leans off the bed and he's staring at the radiator, this time when I was watching it, I was like, oh, it's almost like he's watching TV. Like there's nothing to do for fun in this place, so we're just going to stare at the radiator and think that it is like staring at the TV and watching a movie or something. So I can see that.
Yeah.
Well,
in a very fucked up way.
Even if it's not like the cum dripping off his socks, there is something to him like looking for sex, though. I mean, like he's having there is something there besides me kind of joking a little bit to like a desire that he's having. He is like, I wish I could just be a man again and be with a woman is kind of how I like very reductive way of thinking at it. But I think there's something like that here. And I think, there is the very sexy woman, but I also think there is like that projection of the woman behind the radiator as part of that.
Yeah. And I see it as feminist that she's dodging his sperm, to be totally honest. like, no.
And then stepping on it like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Crunching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really great. I'm going to have to say that around town now.
Yeah.
It's definitely what it is. I believe
that's the theory now. You know what? I bet you David Lynch would be into that too. It'd be like, so is that his cum? And he'd be like, actually, you know what? Now it is.
It is now.
It's like, I've never thought about it. No one's ever thought about that deeply. So sure. Wow. No, people have analyzed the shit out of this movie. There's no way.
I think you should write an essay about this. I think I would read it.
Okay.
Same.
Putting that on Dread Central.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving. This is why. This is what is happening. Actually, all right. Let me just think about it. Hold on. I got some ideas percolating in the old noggin.
Oh, yeah. In terms of just backtracking to Trent a little bit, because he's my fave of all time.
Mine too.
Yes, truly incredible. That Rick Rubin interview that he did, he talks about working with Lynch and how Lynch would sort of draw on paper and be like, can you make it kind of sound like that? And he would like draw something. And he was like, there was like the most amazing creative experience ever, which I thought was really interesting. Way to communicate.
Wait, what did Lynch work with?
I think it was Lost Highway that they...
Yeah, so they did Lost Highway together. And then Lynch also directed the music video for Came Back Haunted, which is just like strobe lights and weird imagery from Eraserhead, in my opinion, just like there.
Cool.
But
all
like,
right.
yeah.
And
they're fans of each other.
Oh, Lost Highway
doesn't surprise me.
I cannot wait to get to that one.
That's the one I need. There are a few of his, like Lost Highway and Inland Empire. I need to see them.
I love Lost Highway. Highly recommend. Bill Pullman.
I can't wait to get to it. We're getting to there soon. We have to get through Fire Walk with Me and the one that I always think is like a non-Lynch movie. Yes.
The Nicolas Cage one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we will be there, and I cannot wait to get to Lost Highway. I'm very excited to watch that.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's another one of those like, whoa, what is happening, man? But like you feel it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear about Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, because that's my favorite Lynch, is Fire Walk with Me.
Okay. All right, I gotta finish Twin Peaks then. This is my sign, and then get to Fire Walk.
I mean, like, also, yeah, I mean, you can finish Twin Peaks, but I also feel like if you just like read what happens at the end of Twin Peaks and you watch Fire Walk with Me, you're not losing a lot, because it's like all happening before, and it's like from her perspective of what happened before she died. So it's like not just the girl, like the dead girl, the pretty dead girl. He flips it and it tells like a really tragic like story about her, and I think it's handled incredibly well. It's very hard to watch, but I think it's done really well too. So,
oh yeah, that's amazing.
I think Lynch gets a lot of shit about female characters when I think he actually creates really interesting female characters.
Mm-hmm. Very memorable.
I think, they're just weird, but why not? I mean, women are weird.
They're weird. They're amazing looking. They're all beautiful.
They are in the weirdest outfits of all time, but they look great.
Yeah,
I love that for them.
Yeah, I love that for them.
Terry, is there anything you wanted to hit on before we wrap up?
Well, I did want to go back to when we were talking about your film, Anna, and you were talking about designing your creature. Did you pull from from the mutant baby from this when you
for
were thinking
sure.
about designing?
Fuck
For
yeah.
sure. It was definitely for stage 1 Appendage. It was in the lookbook. Even for the
Hell
shoot.
yeah.
You know, when we were like bouncing ideas back and forth, I was like, dude, the most iconic baby. We cannot.
The most iconic baby.
But I think in the feature, it comes across a little bit more because, you know, she turns into a worm at one point. That
Yeah,
little baby.
that's true.
She's like, ooh.
Ooh. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, she's cute though.
God damn it, I forgot even in Eraserhead they have the tree come in. They roll in the weird tree, and that's also in Twin Peaks. Sorry, I forget
Really?
about a lot of the weird surrealist imagery in Eraserhead also like translates kind of over to Twin Peaks in a lot of
find socks in Twin Peaks, sock imagery. I feel like your whole thesis about the socks on the radiator.
Yep.
Circle.
I have to do a,
The
now I
wheels
have
are
to do a
turning.
rewatch and be like the radiators of Twin Peaks and of David Lynch, and just write about sexual imagery and radiators. And
Yeah.
I bet you I could find, if I really dig hard enough. I went to grad school. I know how to pull a crazy, weird academic thesis out of my ass.
What I do like about this movie, though,
Anyway.
also is that I do feel as if this, like, if you were to, and I'm curious if I'm going to feel this way when I've gone through his entire filmography, but like, I do know that at one point in Twin Peaks Return, there is like a black and white kind of apocalyptic element.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do I explain any of this?
I don't think you can, but I am curious if this is like his first movie, but also like, because it's very post-apocalyptic, and I do wonder if like in his filmography this is like where everything is heading towards in terms of like life in general, but also in his movies, because there's a lot of themes, like I said, that I feel like gestated here that he has since explored. And so I am curious if this is sort of like the end state for him, because we have like the big picture of the bomb, we have the city that looks like it's dead. I don't even know what people are doing working, because like there doesn't seem to be anything other than the eraser factory that is like a sustainable job. And it gives me like some of the movies that we've seen in the 80s, because we've talked about some nuclear movies here for the podcast that were done in the 80s, like Threads and When the Wind Blows. And this reminds me a little bit of like life after that kind of traumatic event. And so I don't know, I'm just spitballing, but I do feel like there is something here that like he is continuing to explore. And I'm wondering if in true Lynch form, it's like going to be a big circle or something.
That's actually really interesting, because he hasn't made a movie since I think 2006.
Wow.
Inland Empire was his last feature.
Damn. I hope he comes back. I would love to see him remake Oppenheimer in this theme.
Oh
Oh my god. So
imagine.
it's really it's interesting too, because Lynch grew up in Montana. He grew up in like kind of middle of nowhere. And so a lot of his work is supposedly inspired just by also like weird things he saw and like life in that landscape too. And I see a lot of that, like that desert landscape, like in this. It's also in parts of Twin Peaks, like in The Return, not in the original ones that are obviously in the Pacific Northwest. But I think he plays a lot with that imagery because I think he talks a lot about domestic rot. And I think a lot of his work reflects that. And I think this is a film that takes it very literally. Like he starts very literal in terms of what rot looks like, which again sounds funny saying literal with a movie like this where nothing is literal. But like, if you think about it in terms of like domestic rot and what happens when you become part of like the domestic sphere and what that could look like. And then that kind of sort of translates into Twin Peaks: The Return. But I think that I do like the idea of like the post-apocalyptic reading, and I also think it has a lot to do with how he feels about domesticity and like what happens behind closed doors to people.
Mm-hmm.
Domestic rot. That is quite a term.
It is. I love that.
I
want to make a movie about such a term.
Right? It could be titled that, you know? The name of the movie.
Wow. Neat. Well, I just feel like this is a movie that always lends itself to good discussion. There's like no way to not talk about this and just be like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Let me say the weirdest things I've ever said, because I feel like that's the only way to talk about a movie like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I appreciate being able to have this conversation with y'all.
I hope there's more movies like this that come out, you know, with like, you know, we need more weird shit. We do.
Mhm.
Yes,
You need to
we
like break
really
out of the
do.
freaking, mold of what's going on. And I guess like streamers are doing that. Like, I don't know anyone who would have let me make Appendage, I guess, outside of that. But like that, you don't get a David Lynch without taking risks, and
Exactly.
This is something that always bothers me, like in seeing like this whole production and like side of things. It's like people are very, and I do understand it's a business, but it's so concerned about what's going to sell. And obviously, like Anna, this, obviously, like was working with a place like Hulu, like it is cool that they are giving you that chance. I am really glad that places like Hulu are like, yeah, okay, cool, make this weird thing.
Yeah.
But like so many other places are so scared to take risks and trust audiences to like things. I think there's a fear that people aren't going to understand, and like I'm not trusting people to understand things.
Yeah.
That I'm hoping is starting to disappear, because it kind of bums me out when I feel like a lot of movies don't treat their audience like they're intelligent.
Totally. And I'm also like, what's so wrong with like not understanding everything all the time?
Exactly.
Yes, that's another really good point. Like,
Yeah, it's like, let us feel stuff. Like, but I guess like, especially in American cinema, there's this culture of like, we have to understand A to B to C super, super clearly.
Yeah.
If you don't, then like you feel stupid. And if you don't understand it and you're stupid, then you retaliate, like.
Yeah, no, that's so true.
Or then we have articles on websites that are like, what does the ending of X mean? And it's like, it's right there.
Totally. I feel like there should be a wave of like, I don't know, not understanding movies, like the freak wave. We need a freak wave.
Oh, freak wave forever. Like, have you seen The Outwaters, Anna?
No.
So, friend of the show, Robbie Banfitch, made this found footage movie called The Outwaters that is like very much, I think, part of the freak wave of like, you kind of have a vague idea of what's happening, but it doesn't really make any sense. And kind of the point of it is to be like not sure what's going on. It's basically like what happens at the end of a found footage movie. Like they disappear. So what happens when they disappear? And it's like super fucked up and super wild. And I think that's kind of like cosmic horror-y wildness. And it's like more movies like that. And that's on Screenbox, which is Bloody Disgusting's streaming service.
And what was it called? Just so
The Outwaters.
Oh, yep. Here, whoa.
And like Skinamarink. You've heard of Skinamarink, right?
I saw it in the theater. That had a couple jump scares that really got me there. It's all about sound, right? It's like so quiet.
Yeah. Like, yeah. It's feel however you feel about Skinamarink as a movie, but like you have to like it. That and The Outwaters for this year have really started, I think, like moving people towards thinking about like what you're saying, freak wave. And it's very different from David Lynch, but obviously inspired at the same time. And I think like we have had both of these guys on the show, so like it's not like we are friendly with Robbie and Kyle, but I'm not just saying this because they're my friends. I do think like that is a really, and they're both queer, which is even cooler because I love that it's like, I think this kind of stuff should be like, is inherently queer, even though David Lynch is straight. Like there's a queerness to a lot of this stuff.
100%.
So,
100%. Totally agree.
More weird shit, plees.
Yeah, more weird shit, more queer horror. Like, bring it all on. We need more of it.
We do, absolutely.
On that note, do we want to wrap this up and give it a rating out of 5?
Sounds good.
All right,
we fit everything I wanted to talk about.
Cool. Terry, how many sperm babies out of 5 do you give this movie? Also, side note that they nicknamed the sperm baby Spike on set. So how many sperm babies, aka spikes, out of 5 do you give Eraserhead?
Well, there's no sidestepping this one. This is a, even, here's the thing, like this isn't a movie that I'm going to gravitate to. It's not one that I'm just going to be like, oh, it's a lazy Saturday. I'm just going to put Eraserhead on and watch this. It's not, so I have a hard time dealing with that because like it's not something I'm going to keep going to. However, both times that I've watched this movie has made me gross face, like resting gross face, sick to my stomach, just intense, uncomfortable experience that is just like out of my reach. Like I want to understand what is happening, and some things I do, like some of the things we talked about now, it's like, okay, that makes perfect sense. But I love how inscrutable it is. I love how it does not meet you on your terms. It's like, here's this movie, experience it. I'm not going to answer any questions about it. I love that. And I think that considering particularly this is his debut feature film, it's so assured. It's so iconic. Like
Not fair.
Yeah. It's so like this is the intent of the filmmaker, and he is able to do it without any compromise. And I think that this movie is very influential, not only with other films and movies in general, but also with music and sound. I mean, we talked about Trent Reznor, so I can't give this anything less than 5 sperm babies, honestly. What about you, Mary Beth?
Yeah, I was looking on Letterboxd and I gave it a 4 initially, but I think on my on this rewatch I have to go to a 5, because I think when I first watched it, it's like the experience of it all, and you're like, I really like what's happening, but what? And then you rewatch it, and it's like, oh my god, it's still what? But like we talked about, like the radiator woman, and how this is about like parenting and the inherently awful aspects of dating, and I think it's just like such a relatable like film in the most unrelatable way possible, which is something I think only David Lynch can accomplish, like taking a domestic drama and making it a post-apocalyptic hellscape with a mutant baby and a big cheek woman living behind your radiator and a tree oozing liquid out of it, and then you lose your head and they put your head back on you, you know, like
As you do.
am I right?
Yeah.
But like, and I just want to quickly shout out Jack Nance, who is our Eraserhead. Jack Nance is in David Lynch's, Jack Nance has passed away relatively recently, but he was in Twin Peaks as Pete Martell, and he says, my favorite line of all time from Twin Peaks, there was a fish in the percolator, where they put a fish in the coffee maker, and there was no explanation as to why, but that's because it's David Lynch, and I just want to shout out Jack Nance for just being that guy. So, Anna, you have the final word. How many spermy babies out of 5 do you give Eraserhead?
Yo, you know I'm predictable. I'm giving her 5 spikes.
5 old spikes. Hell yeah.
It's a singular piece of cinema with an iconic baby in it. And means so much to so many people. And yet, like you said, is so unrelatably relatable. So she's getting 5 spikes from me.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for joining us to talk about Eraserhead. Where can our listeners find you? Are you on social media? And the floor is yours to talk about whatever you are able to.
I'm on ye olde Instagram. Find me there. I think that's all my social media. I'm not on X or any of that stuff. But this was such a blast just to nerd out about movies and Lynch and Eraserhead. And I feel like you never get to do that anymore. This is such a freaking blast. And your theory on the socks. We even have Trent Reznor, guest appearance here. I mean, it really couldn't go better.
4 quadrants.
Yeah, exactly. 4 quadrants. The 4 quadrants of any discussion.
Exactly. Thanks for having me, for real.
This has been delightful, seriously. Truly. Listener, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What's your experience with Eraserhead? My cat is trying to share her feelings about Eraserhead. You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on social media. I'm at MB McAndrews on Twitter and Blue Sky, or on Twitter, and I'm at mb.mcandrews on Blue Sky and Instagram. Yeah.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful everywhere.
Forgot what my Blue Sky handle was. Oops. And of course, don't forget to keep the conversation going by chatting with us on Twitter and Blue Sky at Scarred Podcast, and on Instagram at Scarred for Life Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want to help support us, we are bringing Patreon back very soon.
Woo! Thank you to Eric Carr for artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Stay creepy.